Isn't it funny how we sometimes tether our thoughts to places? It's as if the words are etched into the ground, indelible markers of memory. There's a stretch of the Harvard Bridge, right when you cross the Charles River and begin to merge into the embrace of the big city, that I rode across almost every day. And sometimes, when I'd gaze at the skyline, at the water, and I'd look down at the bumpy road, a familiar thought echoed in my mind. I was riding a bike in a city that is actually foreign, and it felt weird, like I was living a borrowed life. I knew everything around me was temporary, like a curious ripple in the continuum of my existence. This cityscape, the faces, the cycling, this academic bubble. Constants for now, for these 4 months, but just temporary, fleeting, and not actually belonging to me, not my real life, because of how soon they'd disappear. The thought that familiar sensory inputs of home will eventually reclaim their place. The status quo will resume. That this was merely a ripple. It almost felt as though I was navigating through a transient dream, not my real life. But what a wonderful ripple in space-time this has been. When I first suddenly entered this ripple, it wasn't easy to be thrust into a new world completely foreign to me. The chaotic house, a bitterly cold and grey city, questionable roads, the public transport a joke, and no one to really talk to for the first time in 7 years. I was scared that everyone else was making friends much faster than I was. I felt lonely for a while, sad I didn't have anyone to explore this place with. I held on to relationships I had with people thousands of kilometers away, rather than fully opening myself up to the new people that now surrounded me. At some point, I decided that instead of sitting at home by myself, being sad about being alone, I'd do what I'd always loved, discover the place by myself. In that decision, I found a new appreciation for being alone. And somehow, the city started to make me feel as if I really belonged. Funny though, given how hustling and bustling it was. Maybe it was the quaint houses, the tens of people I saw running every morning, or the fact that the park was right across the street from where I lived. Or maybe it was the Charles River that warmly embraced me with the feeling of home, having always grown up near a body of water, the skyline of Boston replacing the mountains I was used to seeing on the other side of the water. The more I explored with my bike, the city slowly but surely transitioned from a simple collection of buildings to a place I learned to know and call home. I learned which way to go to get to the best vegan ice cream shop in town, and how to get to the start of the Freedom Trail. I learned the way to the Harvard Arboretum, which you'd think would be at Harvard, but was actually on the complete opposite of town. I learned the ins and outs of Mass Ave between Fenway and Harvard. Every little pothole and bump and crack in the road were etched onto my memory that avoiding them became as natural as entering my passcode on my phone. I learned when the lights would turn green and when I could still go on a red light with no risk. I knew the feeling of being lost along the Encore Riverwalk, only to realize that this was the direction you were meant to be going.
This is the really weird hotel with the really weird Google Maps backed bike path.
Yeah, they said walk your bike path.
Where? I didn't see the sign.
Okay, I didn't see the sign.
I didn't see the sign.
The red brick houses along both sides of a road full of potholes, the green paint on the pavement shooing the cars away from the bike lanes, kilometers and kilometers of perfectly paved, separated bike paths that could take me all the way to Salem. The Boston Commons that felt like it was designed with symmetry rather than beauty in mind, and the public gardens right next door that made up for how bare the Commons felt, with what seemed like 100 different kinds of trees. Everything that screamed Boston now screamed familiarity and home. And as winter turned into spring and the trees started showing off their blossoms, the city began to transform into something more beautiful than I could have ever thought the gray and dull streets could become. And I fell more and more in love with this place. And instead of exploring alone, I could explore with new friends. And with every person who came to visit me, with everyone I showed around, as if this was a place I'd been living in my whole life, it somewhat started to feel like that. I realized that in these 4 months, I explored far more of the city on 2 wheels than I ever had done in 4 years in Zurich, and that I was a much better tour guide because of it. I knew the secret little streets with cute bookstores, the places where you'd get the best view of the skyline, the best places to see the sunset, and the most beautiful parks. I kind of found it hard to reconcile the city's beauty with the constant hustle of the student body. Everyone at school seemed caught up in a never-ending race against time, constant complaining about deadlines and homework and too much to do. People seemed to spend every moment focused on work, their eyes set on the distant goal of somehow building up an impressive resume. And oh my, did they all have impressive resumes. But in chasing these dreams, I wondered, did they notice the sweet scent of blossoming trees? The magnolias blossoming all the way down Commonwealth Ave, the goslings swimming in the esplanade, the flowering gardens of lilacs, how peaceful the Charles looked at sunrise, or how the full moon aligned perfectly with the Prudential Tower. Were they aware of what a beautiful place they got to call home? And I thought of Zurich as my home, and that someone spending 4 months in a city would likely think exactly the same. And I wondered, why does it often take an outsider to notice a city's charm? I thought of Recep growing up in Istanbul and the letter he wrote to my grandmother about how much he loved Zurich. And I thought of myself, growing up near Zurich, writing a film about how much I love Boston. It's not that I dislike Zurich. It's the place where we started a life together. That's what I miss about it. Him, our shared apartments, our shared lives and routines. That's also why I actually didn't want to leave. I wasn't planning to come to Boston. The thought of leaving him for 4 months made me very uncomfortable. But a friend convinced me last minute that I should at least try to apply, and I might just get in. So I told him all the arguments for doing one, and by doing so convinced him to do an exchange semester as well. And that's when the journey started. Our last days together in Switzerland were bittersweet and sad, and then he was suddenly gone, in small-town Midwestern America, living in a big house by himself. At the beginning, when I was still lonely and adapting to a new city and new people, I was constantly connected to him. We stuck to our weekly date nights and filling out our couples workbooks. Even though we were 900 miles apart, it in some ways felt as though we were growing together. We were experiencing the same excitement and confusion, newness and uncertainty at nearly the same time. But as time went by and both of us found our routines, our people, our activities, the physical distance naturally slid into emotional territory. The more real things that were happening in my life, the less he became a priority. We'd both cancel our commitments because other in-person and maybe once a semester plans came up, or there wasn't a time in the first place that fit with the different time zones. Sometimes I could hardly remember the last time we had a proper date night or long conversation, and it felt as though we were slowly but surely losing each other's presence in our respective lives. I missed having someone to hug at 1 a.m. when I was still working on my E's code. I missed having our secret funny language and laughing for no reason but the fact we were both so happy to be with one another. I missed having someone who would sing John Denver songs to cheer me up and someone who was made so happy by the mere fact of eating tofu.
And I'm so happy. It's been a long time since I had tofu like this. I got that on camera, didn't you?
I missed the way he loved me, and I missed being able to love him well. He was the main thing that was missing from this ripple, but I feel extremely lucky that we both got to share a sliver of our respective lives there with each other. When I think back to my life in Boston, I don't really think of the hours I spent solving 639 problems, testing my custom GPT with what felt like 100 thermodynamics problems, or figuring out why hydrogen can be produced in what feels like 100 different ways. What I think of now, and what I hope I'll remember, is how alive I felt. How many times I got to witness the sunrise and set, and even the one time it completely disappeared behind the moon. The blossoming cherry trees dancing in the light, sailing across the Charles under the moonlight. I had forgotten that something so simple as seeing the dance of colors in the sky that occurs every day can lead to so much joy and such a rich feeling that life is absolutely worth living. No matter how shitty the rest of my day would be, no matter how many hours I'd have to spend staring at my computer screen tucked away in an unassuming corner of the library, at least I will have seen the sunrise. Tim deserves a special mention in this chapter. I don't think I would have nearly done half as much without him. 3:30 a.m. tennis, this was not my idea. The countless bike rides at any time of day or night philosophizing about free will and differences between men and women, or why people at MIT don't seem to care about politics. Riding for half an hour at 6 a.m. to take photos of cherry blossoms when no one will be there. Forcing my aunt to get up at 5 a.m. so we can see the Esplanade at sunrise. Running to catch the sun at Cape Cod and then driving back into Boston at 3 a.m. because we wanted to see the moon rise over the Atlantic Ocean. That's what really made this semester such a good and memorable one, and what turned Boston into a place I look back on with sweet nostalgia. That's what made this transient ripple such a sweet one. But then again, this ripple, this carved out segment of my life's timeline, wasn't actually more transient than life itself, even if it felt like it. What does it even mean for a city or friends or life to belong to me? None of life really belongs to us. Everything I believe so truly to be mine isn't guaranteed. Nothing is. And it dawns on me that actually I should live every sequence of my life like this, with the feeling that it will end, because it will, even if it doesn't seem so. Why does it take an outsider to see a city's charm? Well, because I guess they live their life with this feeling of it being transient, a transient ripple, thinking that their time there will end. When I get back to Zurich, I'll try to live my life as an outsider as well.